Okay, Carson, please, what did you bring?
I brought a ring.
Hold it up a little higher so we can see it on the camera. Higher this way.
See it?
Nope, higher. There
Higher?
it is. There, we see it now.
Okay.
Your ring. Okay, your wedding ring. Thank you, Carson. And what about you, Roger? What did you bring? Were those the opening strains of the Rocky? Oh boy, we're in for a treat, as you all can tell. Welcome to another episode of Not Quite Strangers. My name is Valerie Hope, and I am your host. I'm so happy that every opportunity I get to meet really amazing people, I want to introduce them to one another. So this opportunity is for two people who are not quite strangers, who have never met before, actually, to connect, to become curious, and hopefully inspire you to be curious as well, and perhaps even challenge some of the status quo around meeting strangers. And today's strangers, I want you to meet Carson Thompson. Carson and I go back a couple years. When I first started my business, I attended one of a seminar, business seminar. Carson was responsible for sharing all things around marketing. And Carson, you've been so instrumental in me getting up and running, getting my website together. And not only that, but you've become such a great mentor. And this is a repeat. You've been on my my earlier podcast, Time to Come Alive, as well. So I'm so happy that you're here.
Mm-hmm.
I know
Thank you.
Yes, I'm so happy that you came and you said yes once again. And then we have
always.
Thank you. And Roger Fung and I go back a few years as well. Roger, you started me on the podcast track. So like 2-3 years now, we are both a member of Toastmasters, and you had a mastermind a few years ago. And really, I got so many great ideas, so many guidance to the tools and resources that I should invest in. And, you brought a lot of inspiration and fun to the process, which seemed a little daunting when I was just trying to look on websites to get information. So I also think that you would be a great person for Carson to meet. The two of you, beyond just the expertise that you have, love pouring into people. You love mentoring, love inspiring, motivational information. And I thought, what would it look like to have two people who have both of those qualities? And, you come from different places. Roger, I think you're originally from
Hong Kong.
Yes, from Hong Kong. Carson, you're from Fort Worth, Texas, correct? Oklahoma.
Well, originally from Oklahoma.
That's right. And so I think you have a few things in common when it comes to what you're passionate about. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'm going to start off by asking, let's go into a little bit more about your object. Carson, we'll start back with you. You brought your wedding ring. What does that mean for you, and how does that connect to who you are today?
My wedding ring signifies my love and my devotion and my commitment to my wife, Charlotte. We met we met, I first saw her in May of 1958. And we had our first date on June 29th of 1958. And a year and a half later, we got married. But when I saw her at church and she saw me, we immediately knew we were meant for each other. And here we are, almost 63 years later from the first date, which we celebrate. And so it's just been so much for her to be a part of my life. Mother, 2 children that we had, and then 3 grandchildren, 3 granddaughters. So we've just been an inseparable part of each other's life. And if the occasion presents it, but we'll let Roger talk a bit first. If the occasion permits it, there's a series of events that are almost unbelievable of how Charlotte and I met, but I'll leave it there for the moment.
Ooh, a cliffhanger.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks,
we should just focus the rest of the call on Charlotte and Carson.
No, you don't get off so good. No. You sang the Rocky theme, so we can't just let that go.
Well, first and foremost, I like to tell myself that I can sing. But is that the truth or not? I'll let someone else decide. When it comes to motivation or inspiration, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with this concept. Because on the one hand, I'm a sucker for these music themes and punchy lines, and I can probably recite a whole bunch of Sylvester Stallone, Rocky phrases. But yet I found myself, I just talk about myself, sometimes I get unmotivated. I say, hey, where's my motivation? And so there's always this kind of love-hate thing, and then I'll go find something. But usually, besides music and movies, I look at just world stories, just things, and not necessarily world in terms of the big W, but the lowercase w too. Just wherever I found myself, whether it be on YouTube or newscast or somebody I heard, and there's always somebody doing something that, hey, I didn't think of that. And those are the stories that inspire me, because as you said, Valerie, earlier, about getting started with this whole podcast, there are millions of ideas out there. You can walk into a library, you can walk into, just type into Google or Amazon. I mean, we cannot, there's no end to trying to find good ideas, but there aren't too many doers like yourself who actually go out there and say, you know what, I'm picking this. Here's the path I'm going, and I'm going to do this. So seeing other people doing things, that's ultimately the inspiration for me.
Cool. Roger, are you saying that I'm inspiring you? That's what Carson, did I hear that right?
Yeah. Yes, you did. And you do. Absolutely, you do.
What was that too obvious?
It was not obvious enough. No.
At some point I have a question for Roger about what he just said. But
sure, go for it, Carson.
Well, I'm curious, Roger, to what extent do you depend on exterior motivation, or to what extent do you depend on self-motivation?
I think the younger I was, the more it was external, right? I mean, it's like school is a good example. Mm-hmm. Or even at this level, university, right? Each and every one of us can Google and YouTube almost anything out there. And we can get, you can log in online and get all the education you want from Stanford, from MIT. All of their courses are completely freely broadcast in the world. But how many people actually gone through all of those things? So I think one of the structure, or one of the value that schooling and universities give us is those structure. Those external structure that says, Roger, you got to start this class this day. And here's the exam that you need to complete. And you got to finish this paper here. Because if not, you're going to flunk out. Okay, maybe I'll flunk out one class, two class. But eventually I have to catch on and say, you know what, I can't keep quitting or keep failing this. So there's this external thing. But at the same time, as you probably leading to, Carson, is that at the end of the day, we cannot completely be dependent upon these external stimuli, external forces to push us to one direction or the other, or we're being pushed one direction or the other and strength along wherever it goes. So I think, to me, it's a constant struggle. It's even daily. That, hey, what am I going to do today? Why am I here? Is it just simply because Valerie asked me to be here? Yeah, she did. She asked me. I have no idea who I'm going to meet. I have no idea who this Carson is, and I'm too lazy to Google his name to do any kind of research. I said, hey, I'm here. Now, going back to a point, a little bit of a spiritual point, I also believe that, hey, there is God around here, right? There's a spirit around here, and I'm being led also at the same time. But I still have to click, on. I still have to click and sign on to participate.
Yeah.
Well, it's very interesting to stand in front of a class of 25 or 30 high school students and ask them the question. You may get motivation now from your parents or relatives or friends or coaches or teachers or whomever, but who are you going to depend on for your motivation when they're not there anymore?
Yeah.
And it's just you.
Yeah. And when that girl dumped me, what am I going to do? Right? She's my motivation. And that comment could be when I was a 5-year-old, but it could very well when I was 50 or 60 or 70, for whatever reason. When that external motivation is gone, what am I going to do?
So I'm curious, Carson, what had you ask that question?
Where or why?
Why?
Why do I ask that question?
Yeah.
Because it's a part of something I teach. And if I may say it at this point,
Please.
I'm absolutely convinced by my personal experience and the experience I've observed in others. If you do 4 things, you will be extremely successful in both your personal life and your education and in your career. The first one of those 4 things is positive character traits. The second one, and that includes self-motivation, self-discipline, honesty, and others. The second one is effective communication skills. There's 5 forms: reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Effective listening skills is the second one. The third one is efficient utilization of time. And I saw in some writings of Rogers that he mentions using time wisely. So the third one is efficient use of time. The fourth one is a concept called grit. And grit by definition is passion, determination, effort, perseverance. And if you do all of those, then you're going to be really successful. A key part of those to me, and one of the outstanding parts, is self-motivation. If you can't get that going, then you're not going to do the rest of positive character traits, and you're not going to do the other 3. You've got to be motivated. And even when you're calling it self-motivation, you can get motivated by listening to music or reading a certain book or something. You might go searching for motivation for somebody. And I'll confess to you, I'm getting it right now from you.
You know, it's funny. I attended a Tony Robbins event about 4 or 5 years ago. And one of the areas he focuses on is your state, right? Your physiological state. And oftentimes he says we get stuck in thinking about something, but we don't really pay attention to how do we change our physiology, because our physiology is what really gives us the impetus to actually take action. It's so funny that I spent 4 days in this event called Unleash the Power Within. I mean, I walked on coals. I was up to like 1 a.m, jumping up and down. Wow. I mean, I was exhausted. And it so happened, I did this event in California, flew back to Texas on a Monday morning. And on Tuesday, I was traveling to Brazil for work. Well, I came home on Monday morning. I woke up. I came home Monday morning, got all my stuff unpacked and that sort of thing. And I was basically out most of the day. I was flying out on Tuesday evening to Brazil. And so that morning I knew that, okay, I need to pack all my things, make sure everything is ready. And I got out of bed and I just I'm exhausted. I got to do laundry. I got to pack my bag. I got to print out some paperwork. And I literally sat on the edge of my bed for like 20 seconds. And then all of a sudden I was like, state change, boom. I just got up and started moving. And I thought it was really interesting. Both of you pointed to this idea of motivation, whether it's external or internal. But so I got external knowledge that I was able to apply to an internal action. And part of it, I think, is important to have both. It's important to have both in my case.
Well, in that case, it's understanding what works for you.
True.
Now, if you didn't have that prior, you could have been someone's puppet, right? I mean, if I know your buttons better than you know mine, so I know which button to push and I can steer you one direction or the other. But now that you know yourself even better, you say, you know what? I'm not gonna let Roger push my button. I'll push my own button, whatever those buttons are. It could be negative or positive. That would move us towards certain directions.
Yeah, I agree. I think the challenge sometimes though, and I'd love to hear from the two of you, what motivates you now? I mean, I think you both alluded to this. When one is young, typically there's a lot more external information, direction, expectation. I imagine at some point in our adulthood, we do rely on that a lot. I mean, we have bosses or spouses or law enforcement. There are other external forces at play. But at this point in your lives, what motivates you? What gets you out of bed? What keeps you going?
Go
Carson.
ahead, Roger.
Okay.
Two words, really just 2 words. Why not?
What do you mean, why not?
Why not in terms of when an idea has arisen, whether it be rise internally or I've heard of others, like, hey, Valerie says, Roger, why don't you come on to the podcast? Why not? Okay. So the details are getting the schedule, picking the date, picking the time. Those are details. But that decision was made way before those details came that says, hey, why not? And I think is that why not when I observe what other people are doing and they say, hey, I'm doing X, Y, or Z, or they've done X, Y, or Z. And I say, hey, yeah, why not? And those are and it doesn't have to be, earth shattering, just something that I've not observed or seen, or I heard of, but I never met the person who actually done it. And those are those little things that motivates me. And I think it's the seeing how other reach some of those potential of, hey, I was just thinking, hey, I'm the first person who have ever gone to college in my extended family. Can I graduate? Well, nowadays, most of us don't even think about those questions. Because many of us are maybe second, third, or fourth generation. But for some families, that may be, for example, for my parents, they've never even finished middle school. Not because they are not educated. They're back in China during those days. They just couldn't do it because of the war and everything. And so, so for them, it would be a big, huge issue. But now for the grandkids, they're like, hey, you're going to college, right? So the expectation will be different. So in terms of motivation is for myself, is seeing those why not moments. People willing to take those risks and trying those things and actually accomplish. And they might fail, but they get up and keep going.
So Valerie, I asked part of that. I just asked why. Yeah. Why would I do it? Why would I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and go teach kindergarten students? Why? Is because I see the face of Ella and Liliana and the little twins of Lily and Layla and Max, and I see their faces. And when I see their faces, I have no trouble getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning and getting ready and going down there and spending the day with them. The why is because I believe there is a chance that something I do or something that I say, the way I do what I do, is going to have a positive influence on them. And I think I know because people from the past have come back 10, 15, 20 years later and told me about it. I know I'm having an influence on them, and I don't care that they give me credit or even recognize that I was the one that had that influence on them. But I know from my experience that 10, 20, 30, 40 years later, I've made a tremendous positive impact on their life. And that's why at age 82, I'll get up out of bed and go be with them.
I think what's interesting, one of the reasons I wanted to connect the two of you is both of you are very generous with not only your ideas, but also your time, right? Or what you've learned, resources that you have. What is it that makes you so generous? Carson, you've alluded to that. You see that you can make an impact on someone well beyond, right? Well beyond what they experience in those moments with you. But what is it? What initiated that? Like, what is it that had the two of you decide that giving, right, sharing, being generous this way was important? Roger?
I'll let Carson start. Carson, you want to start?
I do it, Valerie, because I have to. Yes, I don't have a choice, Valerie. I have to. I know they're there. I know there is a need. People have done it for me. I have a debt of gratitude for what teachers and associates in business have done for me. And I can't help myself. I have to share it. I don't have a choice. I want to, but I also have to. And so I'm driven by that. I have to do it.
Mm.
There is that selfish component,
Mm-hmm.
right? So Carson said he has to do it. So he's satisfying his desire, right? Because he has to do it. He's satisfying a gap in there. And it's the same, very similar to me, is there is that selfish part of it too, is that, you know what, maybe it is because I get up in the morning, this is what I have to do. Or to say, hey, look, I see that I might intersect with somebody's life for 5 minutes. And maybe this is the only time I'll talk with Carlson and never meet him again. So what is it that about this next 5 to 10 minutes that I can do to offer him whatever I can? Sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative. I used to, as much as I don't care about what other people think of me, I used to be a little more combative when it comes to receiving feedback. And they say, hey, you could have done this or that. And then I usually in the past, I would just toss it back. So, hey, then you do it. Now, actually, I might even say the same thing, but in a different way with a different attitude. Is that, yeah, when people come and criticize me about certain things that I've done, that also means that they've been wearing that evaluator hat, right? And they've been evaluating this, and they certainly have some standard. I'm not, whether I agree with those standards is secondary. So at least they have some kind of standard, and they match me up to that standard, and I'm not meeting that standard. Now, the point I have is, it's no longer about me. So I'll come back to that person who say, okay, yeah, I didn't do that as well. How would you do it? Now, in the past, I throw it back in their face in terms of a defense. Today, it's not a defense. I'm not defending myself. I'm using that as a way to come right back, because you, Valerie, certainly have this standard, and you think I'm down here. All right, Valerie, how am I going to get up here? Not only for my purpose or for my benefit, but for yours. How if you can do 10 times better at whatever that issue is, to solving that problem, then I'll step aside. Like Carson said, I don't need the credit. I don't need nobody to know about it, because now I've linked the right person to the right place, and there you go. And I might never see that person again.
Yeah. No, I get that.
May I tell you one experience that
Please?
related to this? In 1990, I led in developing a program, and my wife and I made a financial contribution to it. We're starting a program at the University of Oklahoma for a unique academic center for student athletes. And one part of that, my wife and I funded, and it's related to developing writing and reading communication skills. A lot of our student athletes, particularly Black ones from inner city schools, are very challenged with their education when they come there. And there was one young man that was a tackle from Fort Worth. I never met him, but because of our program, he was able to satisfy the academic requirements and graduate. And he was in really a difficult situation to do that. And so 10 years go by, and he calls one day and tells me that he would like to take my wife and I to lunch. And we did, and we found out that not only did he graduate from the University of Oklahoma, he had 2 master's degrees and was almost finished with his doctorate degree. It would never have happened if we hadn't provided that program. So, what would have happened to that young man if we hadn't have done it? So I have to do it. I have to. Okay.
From what both of you share, I think, and I'm clear even in my own life experience, that we don't always know the difference that we make in other people's lives. Like, I'm sure all of us could go back to like some random encounter with a stranger, a passing encounter at that, like you said, Roger, maybe a 5-minute encounter that absolutely shifted our perspective, shifted our lives, some decision we made, right? And the same goes for what impact we want to make on others. One of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast, it was really born out of a small interaction I had. It was a breakout room that I went to, a Zoom for, it was a social justice event. And there was a woman at the event that said, I wish that my children could grow up in a more diverse community. And I was like, that's interesting. As I started to explore the topic, I realized I'm like, well, I'm full of people with I have a diverse community and also really great relationships with people from a lot of different places. And I was asking her why that was a gap in her life. And as she explained, I thought, I could fill that gap. So she's actually been a guest on the podcast already. I've already started the process, but out of that one small 5-minute breakout session, the whole idea was created. And now the two of you are, have generously said yes to participating in this experiment. I have another question. Both of you have alluded, and I didn't know this until Roger, you mentioned earlier before we went live that you're caring for your mother-in-law, right?
Yeah.
And Carson, you and your wife recently moved to New Mexico, I believe. Yes.
Yes, we're in Santa Fe.
With your children, correct?
We have a daughter that lives next door to us, and they built us a house and brought us here so they could take care of us in our old age. I just had the requirement that we get to define when old age is, not them. So we're not old yet. We will be old, but we're not old yet.
Not yet. Got that.
All right.
So I'm curious, and it plays a little differently, right? But what is it that motivated the two of you to make the decisions that you did? Roger, for you to accept and care for your mother-in-law, and then Carson, for you and your wife to uproot your home and move closer to your daughter.
I have to kind of copy. I have to copy and paste Carson. I just have to do it. Let's take a completely objective, impersonal point of view. In today's society, and this is not about Chinese culture or anything, just completely blank piece of paper. And we say to ourselves, guess what? I'm going to go and work and I'm going to keep making money. I'm going to climb this corporate ladder. And I've got this thing called 401k. And this is my retirement fund. And when I get to whatever that age is defined, I retire. And this is the fund that's going to help take care of me. And if I don't have enough, I also have Medicare. The government's going to do this thing. And we do all of this. But I'm sitting here and saying, hey, who in the world is managing that 401k? Can you name the manager that's managing your 401k? You don't know. None of us know. And even if you know, and you read all the prospectus, just because they said they're going to invest this mutual fund in a high-tech firm, you have no idea whether that is high-tech or low-tech or no-tech, right? But that's a complete third party that you have no idea of trust in terms of their expertise, trust in terms of their character. And you turn around and say, well, government needs to do something. Again, I have no idea. I'm not trashing government. I just don't have any idea of this other third party called Medicare, Medicaid, whatever. And what's the trust of their expertise? What's the trust of their character? Yet that's what we are banking on in terms of going from one generation to another generation, where, hey, whether good, bad, or ugly, at least I know what my spouse is like for the last 30, 40, 50 years, what my kid's going to be like, what my parents going to be like. Okay, I know kind of where to navigate. This is the area that I don't want to step on. But hey, this is the area that we have a common thread on. And that goes even beyond just our blood family, but the three of us, for example. There are certain things that there's overlap that we can enjoy doing together. And I'm sure there'll be a few things that, I'm not touching that. So life is not a 0 and 1. Right? I mean, nowadays, especially in this last year, everything's been 0 or 1. It's becoming digital, and we look at people 0 or 1. Either I'm all for it for Valerie, so you are 1. I found that little thing that I want to cancel you on. Guess what? You are a 0. And I don't believe we can actually live that way as a society.
Yeah, I got that.
Carson? We did take care of my mother. And she died when she was 88. So there were a lot of years that my wife, Charlotte, and I took care of her. And we did the same thing with her parents. My dad died when I was 2 years old, so he didn't factor into it. That event was part of the story of the ring that we might or might not get to.
Yeah. It's interesting. Both of you mentioned this because my mother and I just yesterday actually had a conversation about a friend of hers who suffered a few strokes. My mother's in her 70s. Oops, I'm not supposed to say that.
This is the part when you press delete.
Delete.
Uh,
But she shared that there's a counterpart or a colleague of hers who had a series of strokes actually, and her son has asked her to move closer to where he and his wife live in the same community, which has been a very difficult transition. And the conversation my mom and I had was, would it be best for someone in aging or having had a similar situation to live independently, live with their family, or live in these assisted living or these residences. And my mom claims she's living independently now, but she claims that she would love to be in a residence as long as they have lots of fun activities. But I'm the only daughter. I have 3 brothers, and not to take anything away from my brothers. They will, I'm sure, go above and beyond in their own ways. But I feel a sense of, I don't know if obligation is the right word, but I do feel that whatever happens, I'll have to make arrangements or support or coordinate. Let's coordinate arrangements between the 4 of us to, make sure that my parents are taken care of. But I don't even know how to broach the conversation. We've had conversations about other people, but we've not had conversations about them. And what would you guys recommend, since you both now are having experience, or perhaps even, in your own, your own experience,
just
saying yes.
Just do it. Just do it. Don't overcomplicate.
They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about it. They talk about other people. They don't want to talk about it. It's like conversation shifts direction every time.
Go hug their neck and say, Mom, I want to have a serious conversation with you. So we do some planning here. We want to do something that is the most beneficial for you. So come on, let's talk about it. So I know what to do. I know how to help you. And
I look for.
We found in 3 instances they would stop and listen. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Roger.
No, I was going to say, I look for, if I think there's an issue of having difficulty broaching any kind of conversation, I just look for excuses. So in your situation, you say, hey, look, Mom, we need to do a power of attorney, your medical power of attorney, right? That's just basic stuff that she has to have on her file, things like that. Then you just share those, right? You share those. Okay, who's going to be the first in line? It's going to be Valerie. It's going to be brother A, brother B, brother C. I need your email. I need your phone number, whatever. I'm just updating Mom's medical record. So that's one way. Or so, she's updating her will, whatever. Whatever it is, that's just a way to say, guess what? Oh, by the way, I'm CCing it to all of the brothers.
Yeah.
And from there, you're saying, hey, we're just cleaning up some records, and I'm going to print this out and put it in the car, the glove compartment of every car, so that if there's an accident, there's there it is. So you're killing 2 birds, 1 stone, right? There is the logistical thing that you need to get done, but the real issue is really getting those conversations started. Yeah. And once you're in there, now you can keep going back and say, hey, I got to finish this. There's a deadline. And the doctor's been bugging us about getting this done. So those would be, my tactic is that, hey, there's always some excuse I can just, turn around and bring it back.
That's very clever, Roger. I like that. No, I think that they would be they would be swayed to have a conversation about some of the logistical pieces, right? Make sure the paperwork's okay, that sort of thing. And it's probably, that will be couched in, hey, so what do you think if you were to get ill, and what is the primary and I think in a family situation when you have multiple siblings, generally speaking, there's a combination, right? It's not that you don't love one another, but the style is different of each sibling. Their situation may be different. There might be one sibling that has the ability to help, but doesn't have the desire to help. And then you have the other side where you have the desire, but not the ability. Now, then if that's the case, just because brother A is contributing financially and brother B is doing it with his time, hey, works, right? It's a puzzle, it worked. Yeah. The only problem is, everybody's going that direction. So then you say, okay, just because Carson and his family has this one model and Roger and his family has one model, okay, Valerie might have
very much a different model, and it could come in stages.
Yeah.
Right? You never know what happened. And then one thing, especially with the COVID this last year, something that's very natural, just like COVID, just like 9/11, when there's some kind of external threat, we naturally will drop whatever BS that we have and say, okay, let's deal with this, whatever it is. Now, the trick is not to wait until that next you don't need to wait. You can create those situations or take whatever it is today and leverage into those conversations that you need to have. Because none of us is getting younger.
Not chronologically.
Like, other than Carson, he's still living in denial. So I'll leave it at that.
Carson, when is old age, by the way? You said you and your wife wanted to define old age. Have you figured out what the definition of old age is yet?
Yeah, it's when I'm no longer capable mentally or physically to do what I want to do. I have some things I'm very passionate about. I want to do them. I'm strongly motivated to do them. I'm going to do them until I can't. And when I can't, either physically or mentally, then I'll have to stop. And then, quite frankly, I'd just like for it to all be over right then. A giant stroke maybe or something. And, when you reach the point that you have many more yesterdays than you do tomorrows, you're wondering what is that's going to be. Right now, I'm in very good health. I've taken very good care of myself, but something's going to happen. I know it is. And I don't know whether it's going to be a stroke or a heart attack or cancer or an accident. Something is going to be that trigger event and end it. I don't know what it is. And I'm going to put it off as long as I can. Einstein had his theory. And so we have the right to have ours. So I have one. And that is, old age can't catch up with you if you're moving fast enough. Right up there with the theory of relativity. And so I'm moving fast.
That's right.
I'm not going to stop, and I'm not going to slow down.
I love it. Carson's theory of, I don't know what you would call it. What do you want to call that, Carson?
The theory of avoiding old age.
The
Just
fountain
keep
of
moving fast enough.
Right.
That's interesting.
So age will never catch up.
No, it shouldn't.
Right.
It shouldn't.
Well, I made a determination a long time ago that I was not going to look or act like I was my age. And I don't.
What does that mean?
So, it means that the way I look physically, the level of activity I have, you saw me in the seminar.
Yeah.
Valerie, I'm highly energized.
Yeah, when you did those backflips and handstands, we were shocked.
So that, that was 2 or 3 years ago. So let's say 2 years ago, I was 80 and you saw me.
Yeah.
Did I look like I was 80 or act like I was 80?
Not at all. Not at all. Such
and
presence, stamina. You were up there for hours, and you could have gone probably another. Yeah.
And enjoying every minute of it. And I was trying to squeeze in sharing everything I could share.
Yeah. That's one of the things I really respect about you, Carson. We've had some phenomenal conversations, really, because of how generous you are with information and your skill set. I want to shift directions a little bit with the two of you. So 2 things came to mind. I typically ask my guests to remove any virtual backgrounds, but I thought it was so funny that both of you chose to bring virtual backgrounds. Very few people do. So I'm curious about, why do you have a virtual background? I'm just going to put you on the spot.
I have a virtual background because I have an untidy, tiny office, and mostly because of lighting. Having that background helps reflects the light. It makes it a little bit clearer. That's basically it.
Got it. So aesthetics.
Yeah.
And Carson, for you?
Well, my lighting is not real good because I don't spend very much time doing this. Usually when I'm doing something on teaching online, I have a PowerPoint presentation up, and if they see me at all, it's a little bitty photo, over in the corner, just like I have at the top of the screen for the three of you. I've experimented with the lighting and it really didn't get any better, so I just quit worrying about it. So when you say a virtual background, I don't know, you mean just my surroundings here where I have file cabinets and things and a television and
Oh,
I
is this
listen to
not a
lot of music.
background?
Huh?
Is this, are you, is behind you, that's your real office?
Yes.
It is. Oh my
I'm in
goodness.
this is just my office. Well, what is
Oh,
this supposed to be? What,
Actually, he set it up perfectly, where the background is much darker, and he has the light on him and makes it more 3D. So yeah,
Ooh,
he's
you
a lot
fooled
more
me.
advanced than the two of us, Valerie. Give it up for Carson.
Oh,
I
Roger.
don't have a virtual background either. So really,
I
Roger,
have no idea what all that. I have no idea what all that means. I have an office space that I work in, and I have many things handy to reach. And I clean them up, at times, but during the day, I have stuff all over the floor, things that I'm working on. So I have a lot of projects underway, and some of them I want to discuss with Roger. I'm nearly completed with an 18-hour program on marketing. And I have finished a 1-hour program on how to maximize success in your personal life, education, and career. And I have a 3-hour program on the power of positive mindsets. And so I just work on these things, and I'm working on developing business plans for clients right now. There's some of them right there in the Dallas area. So
always
I
moving. Always moving.
I love it. I'm having fun. And I don't know when we're going to get to the song, but my song fits in here. But
go for it.
Slogan.
What is your song or your slogan?
My slogan is I aspire to inspire before I expire. I aspire to inspire before I expire.
Fitting.
And the other thing, and this may sound a little sad, and this has changed over time. But my favorite song right now is Neil Diamond's Done Too Soon. And Neil Diamond starts out in this song singing, but mentioning the name of various people. Starts off with Jesus Christ, Fanny Bryce, Mozart, Humphrey Bogart, Valerie Hope, Genghis Khan, H.G. Wells, Ho Chi Minh, John Wilkes Booth, Roger Fung, and it goes on. And then he gets down to the end and he says, and each one there has one thing shared. They have all sweated beneath the same sun. They've all looked up in wonder at the same moon and wept when it was all done for being done too soon. And wept when it was for it being done too soon. So you may look at that and say, oh, gee, that doesn't sound. No, here is the positive side of it. Before I get to the point that I weep because I'm done, I'm going to do everything I can.
Yeah.
I know that moment's coming, but when I get there, I'm going to look back on what I've done, and I'm going to say, yes, you gave more than you took. You influenced every life that you could possibly reach in a positive way. And you've given it everything you had physically, mentally, and emotionally. So we get there and I'll ask the question, what have I done? What have I done? I'm going to have a reasonably good answer to it with some satisfaction. Now I'm still going to weep because I don't want it to end. This is life is too. There are so many people that taught me so many things that influenced my life so significantly that I have to and I want to share what they shared with me. And when I go out of this life, I'm going to go out of it fighting. No, I want one more time in a classroom. I want one more time to speak to some kindergarten kids. I want one more time in a group of mature students, teaching them how to start and run a small business. I want one more time in the classroom with seniors, teaching them anything, whatever it is.
I love that. Thank you, Carson. And I'll make sure that we put some of those lyrics, or at least a reference to the song, in the notes in case people want to listen to it. And I'm really flattered that Neil Diamond chose to include Roger and me in the song. That's amazing. I'm
He
honored.
knew we'd be doing this.
A little Tesla time travel there.
Roger, what's your reaction to that, Roger?
But you noticed my name wasn't in there. He didn't mention me. Just
He didn't
okay.
mention
Sorry,
Well,
go ahead.
it was not mentioned 5 minutes ago. You never know what's going to happen 5 minutes later.
That's true.
In a
it's
very
fun to do.
similar vein of what Carson has talked about giving, I think the couple of things that I keep reminding myself of. One of them is about, life is about give and take. And oftentimes, the person, group, community that I give to very well may not be the person, the group, the community that's going to give back to me. Meaning I may give and invest a whole bunch of time and energy and money at Carson, but he may not be the one returning the favor.
Yeah.
So I may be receiving from Valerie, but taking and giving something else. So, but in totality, as a life, there is that constant flux of give and take, and I cannot be only on the one end or the other. If I keep giving, to me, is that right, that oxygen mask on the plane, right? The mask comes down. I'm worried about putting it on everybody else, and I end up dying and becoming a liability to someone else. I got to put that mask on, right? So on the other hand, if I'm just going to keep putting everything on me, I become diabetic of whatever it is, diabetic of knowledge, diabetic of ideas, and it's just going to keep shoving it, and there's nothing to come out of. So that's one, is that give and take, that today each and every one of us may choose a different avenue. Some of us is standing in front of a classroom. Some of us is standing or sitting in front of a Zoom. And some of us are really focused on that group that is, even though it's right in our backyard in the same zip code, but because of the pandemic, I'm going to do it digitally. Or someone might take off with this and say, you know what, I'm going to do this internationally, wherever Zoom or Wi-Fi can go to. So I think that that those are the things. You started off this whole podcast about meeting strangers, meeting people with different background, different personalities and things, and to me it comes this whole idea of prejudice or prejudging comes down to me it comes down to risk management. How do I manage risk? So if in my mind I have this image of a white Anglo-Saxon like Carson, and in my mind I have this picture of what this person look like, act like, then I'm going to treat him the way, not because Carson is that way, but because I have this expectation. There's this image, and I'm doing a risk analysis. I'm doing, we may not tell ourselves, but that's what we're doing. So if I don't care what color, skin, or whatever, he can come down, running down the street with a knife, running right at me. I'm not going to say, I wonder if he's, an extra in a scary movie. Right? I'm doing an assessment right at that moment. I have no idea who that person is. He looked like it is a dangerous situation. Therefore, I'm going to have to react one way or the other. And maybe I step away and he does run past me. Oh, he is an extra in a movie set. So I think oftentimes that's part of where a lot of the misunderstanding in our communities and in our groups is that we are not really meeting the other person as who they are, but we are reacting positively or negatively, both, toward not them, but our image or our expectation of what that person or that thing or that political party or that person of that role, they're the president or vice president, whatever the roles are. We are reacting toward those expectations, not so much the real person, partly because I want to assess that risk. Is this going to be a risky situation that will cost me versus is this going to be a beneficial situation?
Somebody once said that oftentimes, and they were mentioning this in the terms of dating, that oftentimes we don't actually show up we send our representative, right? The most polished, most perfect version of who we think we are is the person that's interacting until the mask fall off afterwards. I think for me, I have the benefit of connecting with a lot of different people. And I think one of the things that innately appealing to me is this idea of going deep quickly, not quickly as in invasively, but quickly as in, I hate small talk. I really do. As extroverted as I am, I cannot take a second of, well, how's the weather? How's it over there? How are you doing? It gets so tedious so quickly. And a part of this experiment or this exercise in this podcast is how can we talk about something that has some meat, right? So rather than inviting someone to come and show their representative, it's actually, no, bring yourself. But I'm curious, and Carson, I'm going to start with you because you shared right at the outset that you Googled Roger when I when I said that the two of you would be meeting.
We're not going there, are we?
Oh, we're going there.
I researched him. We have something in common. We both immigrated. He from China, from Hong Kong, and me from Oklahoma. Going from Oklahoma to Texas was about like coming from Hong Kong to the United States.
Probably worse. Probably worse.
And then
just the differences of culture there.
Especially when I was leaving a farm, that we did not have electricity until I was 12 years old. We did not have indoor plumbing at all. So I lived in a house without a bathroom the first 18 years of my life. We didn't have television. We didn't have a telephone. We had to cut wood for cooking and heat. But let me take this for just a moment, if I may, and tell a bit of the story of how I got to the ring, and also for other people to understand that they can. So I was born at a time of parents that I did not choose. I didn't choose what color my skin would be, what my nationality would be, what language I would speak, whether I was a boy or a girl. So I came into this world, lived in a house that didn't have electricity and no indoor plumbing. My father died when I was 2 years old from typhoid fever. And just think about it, 90% of the people that lived then that had typhoid fever lived. But he was one of the 10% that died. And that, if that hadn't have happened, it would have changed my life entirely, because my senior year in high school, I was offered a commission to go to the Air Force Academy. If my father hadn't died, I would have gone. But he did, and I couldn't leave my mother. I had to take care of her. I had a brother and sister in Fort Worth. I came here. I couldn't find a job. I started working at a service station at night. I met a young man who was moonlighting, who worked at a company called Tandy Corporation. I started to school at Texas Wesleyan University. On the way to school one morning, I had a wreck. And while my car was being repaired, a buddy that lived close by agreed to come get my mother and I to take us to his church. And there was Charlotte. So you go through all these sequence of events and wonder, my goodness, how did that happen? But from that, as you know, Valerie, I finished, and I didn't go, my commitment was not go to college. It was to get a college degree. I did. I went into business. I managed a distribution center. I managed marketing. I managed a division of the corporation and then 6 divisions of it. We separated, and so I was head of a corporation. I bought a little 2-store operation into it. We expanded it from 2 stores to 440, from 20 people to 3,000. And from the $26,000, I paid for it to a market value of $1.1 billion. So I'm telling you, if this little boy from this little farm in Oklahoma could do that, other people can too. Yeah. And that doesn't mean that their measure of success is the same as mine. Their measure of success is whatever success means to them. Initially, I wanted to make a lot of money, and I did. And then I wanted to share it. So I've shared my money and my time ever since. And here at 82, I'm going to do it for a long time. And I may, when death occurs, I may just refuse it and say, no, it's not going to be then. I'm going to keep going.
We could only hope, Carson. We only hope. All of us have so much to give.
Yep. Why not? That's the thing, right? It comes back to why not?
Why not?
He
Yeah.
has
You're
that.
right.
Hey,
Why not?
I have this opportunity. I'm going to keep going and keep going. And you oftentimes it's you don't know where to take the turn unless the car is still moving.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get that car, keep moving, and yeah, you might run into a construction, and you have to take a detour. All right, well, kids keep moving,
Yeah.
and those detours may very well become not so much of a stumbling block, but a stepping stone.
Mm.
And you wouldn't know until probably after.
Oh, that's good. Oh, that's good.
You can create another 15-hour class, Carson, with that.
Yeah.
That's right.
But do it with Roger.
Right.
Do it with
There
Roger.
you go.
Remember to send both Valerie and myself those commission checks.
Yeah, I want royalties. So I want to zoom out a bit of this conversation and ask you, first of all, I know, Carson, you Googled Roger. Roger, you said you were too lazy to do the same. So, but I'm curious, from the moment I asked and invited the two of you to participate in this podcast to now, share with us a bit about your experience having now met one another and had this conversation.
Carson?
Well, one of the key positive traits we need to have is to be prepared. So I prepared for this. I learned everything about Roger I could. I know where he was. I know what degrees he got, which are very impressive. I know what he's done in some aspects of his life and business, and I want to know more. And out of this, I would spend more time with him and explore some things we might do together. One of the character traits that you need to develop is to know what you don't know that you need to know to be successful. Know what you don't know that you need to know to be successful. And if you don't know what you need to know, either you learn them or you find somebody that does. And Roger knows some things that I don't know, and I want to know more about him. So you're going to let me have his contact information.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
But Carson,
Roger, I will be in touch.
But hang on, Carson. So before you, since you've been stalking Roger, but how about in this conversation, what have you discovered, or what have you heard that perhaps was unexpected or surprising based on just this experience in the conversation today?
If you're asking me, I just, I learned a lot about Roger and his motivation. I know something about his skills that he has, but I want to know more. And I think there's a lot there that he and I could work on together and hopefully benefit each other. So I want to know more about him. We just skimmed the surface here.
Absolutely. So, all right.
One of the questions I'll ask him when it's just us is what are the top things that you're passionate about? If you set family and faith aside, what's the rest of what you're really passionate about? And I know what I am, and I'd like to know what he is.
All right. So there's definitely more to talk about.
In the next episode.
Next episode.
Not quite strangers.
Are you inviting yourself back, Roger?
I'm casting a cliffhanger here for the last 2 minutes.
Both of you are so adept at cliffhangers. Love it. Roger, what about your experience?
This may sound contradictory or paradoxical, but one thing about being lazy is to take risk. Is to take risk of, this is not knocking about being prepared or not. It is about presenting myself in a situation that I have no expectation of. Now, of course, I mentioned about risk taking earlier. It was not a huge risk taker because I do know you, Valerie, prior to this. And I have absolute trust in you in terms of where you bring me or who you have me meet. But even if it blows up intentionally or unintentionally, okay, that's part of life. So part of it is, on the one hand, there are things and times that I'm really extreme preparedness. And then there's the other end of the spectrum where there are time, place where I feel safe enough maybe to be completely, quote unquote, unprepared, not only in terms of doing the mechanical work of reading, Googling, but really mentally and heart-wise in terms of, I wonder what this is going to be about. And do I need to do anything, kind of a Tai Chi, karate move to do any kind of blocking? So, okay, let's, whatever it is, what's the worst that could happen in a sense? And like I said, with the trust of knowing you, therefore, the last hour and a half has been more of being here to say, number one, I am here and I am offering myself for whatever it is and open up for whatever answer that I can give and share questions. At the same time, be willing to be here to receive whatever it is that could possibly throw my way, positive or negative. And I think for people who don't have that experience before, and it can very well be very scary. And speaking for myself, immigrated into America when I was 13, Carson talked about how he didn't choose certain things, where he grew up, the gender, the race, the culture. There's certain things that I didn't make a decision on. My parents didn't ask me whether I want to come to America or not. And when we decided to come to America, there wasn't any, I was not part of the decision to grow up in Seattle. And specifically what block that I live in. Those things are really external. But once I was in those situations, now what am I going to do with my environment? How am I going to reach out to it? And it's very easy for all of us, no matter what background we have, to gravitate, especially online now. We can gravitate and find our kind, however you want to define that our kind is. Because that light attracts light, whether it is cultural speaking, maybe a hobby, maybe Toastmaster, right? I mean, some people can say, you know what, I'm a lifelong Toastmaster and I do nothing but Toastmaster. Or somebody who says, I'm a businessman, or I'm X, I'm Y. And you can literally spend 24 hours, 7 days a week with that group. And there's certainly a lot of value in that, but it also keeps you very tunnel vision.
Yeah.
Very limited for what that is. And so I was fortunate that when I came to America, I was in generally a city, and I was just not a suburb, but just right on the edge of Seattle. And my community was very diverse in terms of age. We had a retired World War II, flying tiger, a pilot just 2-3 houses down the road. I've got a black grandma, single grandma living by herself right next door to us. And then I've got, Filipinos and Japanese just around the block. So I happen to be around those 3 or 4 streets where we really have a lot of differences in terms of age, background, culture, and so on and so forth. And not to paint a picture of me being so diverse and so welcoming and so inclusive, because as soon as I graduated from college, I flew back to Hong Kong to work. And the moment I got out of the airplane and I came out where the waiting area is, I was having a reverse shock. I look around and say, I've never seen that many Chinese at one place in the one time. The point is, the last few years, I'm used to a different environment.
Yeah.
So if I'm a fish that's been, swimming in the ocean, you dump me over at the lake. Guess what? It's a shock. Yeah. Good, bad, or ugly. It's a shock. So I had a reverse cultural shock when I went back to work in China and work in Hong Kong. That's not what we're used to. I was going through my high school years and college years. So it's not so much of growing up or me intentionally gone there and said, I want to be inclusive. I want to be doing all this thing. But it was simply a decision that was made by my parents to come to America, to go to Seattle. And I was in that situation and I started absorbing that. Now, as I get older, things becoming more intentional in terms of the type of people that I want to interact with, the places I want to go. But a lot of that upbringing is basically done by someone else or decided by someone else.
Mm-hmm. The external piece, I think both of you alluded to in the very beginning. Carson, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to mention that whoever sees, they should be aware that Roger has a course, a book, if you want to call it, on Udemy. That is very good. And you can listen to his Toastmasters speeches on YouTube. I have, and they're very good. So
I should be scared. I should be scared now, Valerie.
So I just wanted them to know about his accomplishments.
I want to know if he's actually next door.
I have all kinds of information about Roger here. You can't hide. Okay.
Carson does not
Valerie,
disappoint.
Did you say that Carson used to work for the CIA?
we are not allowed to know that piece of information. I can neither confirm.
His stage name is Tom
deny.
Cruise.
Can't deny or confirm those claims. Look, I have had an absolute joy in connecting the two of you and seeing, like I mentioned earlier, just really validates what, for whatever reason, the two of you came to mind as soon as I knew that you were going to you both said, yes, you'd be willing. And yeah, you did not disappoint. and so thank you both.
It's been fun.
Much. Oh, it really has.
We are your Abbott and Costello. Lauren Hardy. Or maybe Dumb and Dumber, but I don't know if I should go there.
I wouldn't put labels on it. Like, why put labels? But I do really appreciate and enjoy the fact that both of you are so committed to not only developing yourself, but also developing others. I'm sure it sounds like there's some perhaps opportunities in the future for you guys to not only connect, but also create something, which is phenomenal. And really the foundation of building connection with people is because there's always something that multiplies when people are connected. Ideas grow stronger and bigger, the opportunities or the resources are multiplied, and you are both a demonstration of that live. We just saw it. Although Carson has done some of his homework. Roger, I'm sure if you were to see some of the things that Carson's done over the years, you would be as impressed. So thank you both so very much for participating today. I'm so excited that you're going to continue the conversation at least and see where you might partner. Any final words before we wrap up?
I need a new phone number.
We'll get the contact information.
Do you want to? All of a sudden, Roger's enlisted. That was weird.
He's been canceled.
The final word.
He's been canceled.
The final word on it, Valerie. The final word on it, Valerie, is to understand that we get so much more from giving than we do from taking, and that there may be selfish part of that, but there's also a part of it that we have opportunities everywhere we go and meet, sometimes without even saying a word. Yeah. It's nonverbal communication of how we look at somebody, how we treat somebody. We're a walking, living opportunity to influence people positively by what we do, what we say, how we dress, everything about our mannerism. And so there's opportunities there. We just need to recognize them and enjoy giving.
Absolutely. One thing just came to mind, and we've gone over a few minutes here, but Carson, one of the reasons that you and I've connected over this past few years is because at that seminar, you gave all of us who were there were more than 100 people in the seminar. You gave each of us the opportunity to connect with you and have you review our marketing or business plan or website, and that you would give us feedback. And that was it. I gave you my card or put my name on the list or whatever that process was. And from that conversation, you just said, hey, well, let's catch up again and tell me how you've done. And it just became, all of a sudden we started connecting more regularly. And Roger, you and I met very briefly when you were asked to come and speak at my home Toastmaster club about pathways, which is the curriculum that Toastmaster uses. And what really struck me was your tie, not to just the logistical presentation of this is how it works and why we do it, but you really connected it to the inspirational, the purpose, like individual purpose of why someone is in the program and in the club, and how they can use that to leverage and amplify their purpose. And you did also say that if anyone else would like to get this information or share, that you offered yourself. So both of you on both of those occasions at least gave me access. I think that was the very first thing. You both gave others access. Now, I don't know how many people reached out to you, but that was actually the initial connection. And from there, over the last few years, it's expanded. So my point in bringing this up is to really demonstrate for others that it doesn't take something formal. It really takes very little. All we need to do is give people access. That's it. Just openness. And it could be a smile. It might be a card. It might just be a LinkedIn request or something. But giving people access makes all the difference in connecting in meaningful ways.
And let me give two parting words. Gift to all those who are watching right now live or in the replay. Number one, a book you can just Google or Amazon, a book called Thanks for the Feedback. It's a wonderful study from a researcher, a professor I believe in Harvard. And the point is that whether it is in a Toastmasters club or at our work, we're always giving feedback to others. And if you go and search feedback in Amazon, you probably get 300 or 400 books on how to give feedback. But what you're not going to get, or you find very little, is how do you receive feedback. So this book is wonderful in terms of looking at the various aspects of feedback, whether those feedback are right on point or the feedback from hell. How are you going to get the most out of it? So that's a wonderful resource. I'll encourage everybody to pick it up and read it or go to your library. Thanks for the feedback. Number two, now that many of us may have experienced living online for the first time in this last year, doing a lot of meetings at work, at church, your PTA, your nonprofits, or even with family members and in group meetings like this all of the time. Here's one simple tactic that could potentially help you become the center of influence in whatever group that you belong to. And that is simply type up a summary of those decisions and those meetings. And if there's any deadline, and email it back to all of the participants, plus CCing people that should receive those emails. So suppose this is a work team at our work, and we talked about how Carson's going to do X, Y, and Z, and he's going to deliver it on Monday, and how Valerie's going to take over from that point forward and add MNOPQ, and she's going to finish her part by Wednesday, and Roger's going to do da, 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 da. It's very simple. Don't make it a official minute, because if you make it official, you're going to step on somebody's toes. Make it as just, hey, Roger's trying to make sure that he remembers all the points. So based on our meeting today, here's an email. Carson's going to do X, Y, and Z by this day. Valerie's going to do MNOPQ by this day, and Roger will complete this by this day. Do I have this right? And you email it to the three of us, plus, oh, I just happen to also CC our boss. When you do that consistently, number one, you just remind it from a content standpoint, everybody's on the same page. We are not going to miss those deadlines. At least even if we miss those deadlines, we know what the deadline is. We're not arguing about, I thought it was Tuesday. No, it's Wednesday. It's next week. It's next month. So from a content standpoint, everybody's more clear. But from a delivery / control of information, you have do this as a regular practice. You have become the center of information in your organization. And when somebody gets stuck, ooh, hey, ask Roger. Ooh. And your boss knows, hey, he's been on the ball. Those are my 2 parting ideas.
Lovely. Roger, can you please type up some of the notes from this podcast and CC Carson and me?
Roger gets a new phone number. Cancel all
Put them
social
somewhere
media.
where I can find them.
Yes. Gentlemen, once again, thank you so much. Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for sharing your ideas, your motivation, inspirational thoughts. And I'm sure that people will want to continue to connect with you and all this wonderful learning and teaching that you have to offer. So I'll be happy to put your contact information, whichever one is appropriate for you. Although Roger might be changing some of his access soon. I'll make sure to share it in the show notes. But for everyone else who's out there listening, and those of you who are viewing this, please be sure to subscribe to www.notquitestrangers.com. So that way you get this episode and many more straight into your inbox. You also, if you go to YouTube and subscribe to the Connect to Joy channel, you'll be notified anytime a new episode is posted. And more importantly, if you want access, speaking of access, to some of our guests, we will be hosting quarterly events. If you're subscribed, you will get an invitation. So be sure to subscribe. Again, www.notquitestrangers.com. Thanks, everyone. Roger, Carson, thank you again. Have a wonderful rest of the day, everybody.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the podcast Not Quite Strangers. Be sure to subscribe or follow on your favorite video or podcast platform. And for more information and content, go to notquitestrangers.com. See you next time.